A cannon punch, lightning speed with the legs, and bare power defined Don Frye, a legend of old-school MMA. Today, he is the hero of the Night of Champions, as we remember the Ultimate 96 tournament. Another favorite from Ultimate 96 was Tank Abbott, a fighter whom every self-respecting MMA fan knows. So let's get started. Who is the greatest fighter in the world? This question guided the first UFC tournaments. The show began with great disappointment, as one of the strongest members of the Octagon, Mark Coleman, was eliminated due to a virus, which greatly upset Don Frye, who dreamed of avenging the defeat. Fishhooks, bites, and punches to the eyeballs were banned in this tournament. The ever-present John McCarthy was keeping order. It was an incredible atmosphere, with fans eagerly awaiting the fights. Up first is Ken Shamrock's fight with the tough Brian Johnston. Behind the scenes, this fight was actually not first, but was the fourth fight, as UFC manipulated the records to ensure that in the semifinals, Tank Abbott, after 2 fights, clashed with Ken Shamrock following only 1. Tank arranged a showdown, but no justice was done. Understandably, Johnston, the winner of the Golden Gloves tournament, wanted to fight in a standing position, knowing Shamrock's raised chin was a good target. But Shamrock had good takedowns and at the right moment caught a low kick and moved to the ground. After that, Brian's wheels fell off. Repeated blows hit Johnston's head, which worried management as Shamrock was easily injured and had withdrawn from previous tournaments many times before. Johnston didn't even think about giving up, forcing Ken to strike over and over again. But notice that Shamrock starts hitting with his left, the result of an obvious injury to his right hand. He presses the opponent with his head into the octagon and then carries out a choke with his forearm. If only Shamrock had done this earlier, he could have avoided injury. Now here is the fight we were waiting for. Frye's revenge with the frenzied arm wrestler Gary Goodridge, Big Daddy. Goodridge was a very tough competitor, and the fans are on the edges of their seats. Goodridge intends to get even with Frye for his defeat at UFC 8. Frye is, as always, charged up. As the fight began, the fighters immediately came together in a hockey clinch, exchanging mutual uppercuts. The larger Gary pins Don against the octagon. For this fight, Goodridge donned a gi, inspired by Royce Gracie, but this only made him more tired. Meanwhile, Frye was already throwing powerful hooks and uppercuts. Goodridge returned fire. Then a real showdown begins. Goodridge calls Frye, putting himself under attack. A real feud, and not dull trash for the cameras. And again, the hockey clinch. Frye is clearly stronger as he throws another blow. Goodridge is tired. You can see that he is uncomfortable with the gi. Frye lands a blow to the head, but gets a counterattack from Big Daddy. Gary throws Don Frye, an elite wrestler, on the floor. Gary uses dirty tricks, but to no avail. Frye tries to enter the armbar, and the second attempt to enter an armbar from Frye failed, but he managed to throw off the opponent. Goodridge surrenders, but we cannot rush to condemn him, as he later admitted that because of the gi, his heart almost stopped. He simply could not move. For the second time, Don Frye defeats Big Daddy, but neither were easy victories. It's high time for Tank to face Cal Worsham, a former Marine and guard at Folsom Prison. An interesting matchup for a street fighter with a prison term behind him to square off against a prison guard. But Tank liked this arrangement. Before, he had won in the cage against police officer Steve Jenham. Cal immediately throws a right cross. He is not afraid of Abbott, but Tank squeezes him at the perimeter. And here is the most famous moment of old school MMA. Before the fight, Tank expressed the desire to be the first to throw a person out of the cage, but Worsham managed to catch his foot, throwing many blows to the head of Tank. Tank aggressively works on the ground. Cal uses dirty tricks, but claimed that it was Tank who pressed his eyes. In the end, Worsham surrenders, and while Tank takes a lap, Cal rushes to a fight that's already been stopped. With Big John McCarthy, such tricks don't work. Cal said that Tank pressed on his eyes and even reached into his mouth with his fingers, with McCarthy covering for him. But that's just nonsense. John was in conflict with Tank and would not shield him. Tank himself would much rather have beat Cal to death. The next fight is Kimo Leopoldo's fight against Paul Varlands. And this is the most awkward passage to the legs that I've ever seen. Leopoldo merely ran, so Paul simply fell on him. Varlands was not taken aback and used his fists. Powerful elbows, and I don't envy him, not one bit. He obviously didn't plan for this series of blows. Kimo tries to throw Paul down, but due to his weak response, he receives heavy blows up the yin-yang with elbows and a blow to his head. Varlands clearly does not want to be a springboard. Let me remind you that the UFC scheduled fights in a certain order so that favorites like Leopoldo fought with guys like Varlands and easily made the next round, a fact that the UFC admitted. After 9 minutes of beating, Leopoldo knocks over his opponent, hammering him on the ground. Quite the will to win. Unfortunate, but predictable. Shamrock broke his arm and withdrew from the fight against Tank, who had bad blood with Shamrock and had long wanted to settle scores. Ken was replaced by a tough guy, Steve Nelmark. The fight begins, and Nelmark clearly has no response for Tank. Hard punches to the body and a powerful throw, a beautiful display of early MMA. The fight continues and Abbott breaks loose, throwing sweeping punches. Tank hits with a left uppercut and Nelmark is shocked. Abbott throws a deadly right hook that knocks Steve out of his shoes. Tank makes history at UFC with one of the most famous knockouts in MMA history. And now the semifinal bout between Don Frye and substitute Mark Hall. Kimo Leopoldo, fresh off a win against Varlands, was unable to compete in the semifinal. As Varlands himself said, he had partially spoiled UFC's planned draw. This was Hall's third fight with Frye in 1996 alone. The first fight was a 10-minute one-sided beating from Frye. The second fight, half the length, was the same result. Without any problems, Frye throws Hall and does a submission move to his leg. Hall's face exudes pain. In his book, McCarthy expressed surprise at such a quick submission by Hall, although everyone knowledgeable about this painful submission maneuver certainly appreciates the pain that Hall was experiencing. McCarthy also wrote that Hall and Frye subsequently worked with the same manager, which evinced that this short meeting was negotiated. But was it necessary for a beast like Frye to buy a fight with a fighter like Hall? You decide for yourself. And finally, the mega fight of Tank versus the Predator. Abbott was extremely intent on victory, eager to finally earn his first UFC title. But Frye was no pushover. The fight has begun. With an accurate jab, Tank knocks down the former pro boxer, and after that, a real old-school fight begins. An open exchange of blows, and Tank clearly beats Frye, taking aim, but careful not to lose his head. Here, Tank falls accidentally, but the Predator sensed blood in the water and turned up the heat on Tank with his superior fighting skills. Tank loses by rear naked choke for the second time in the final of a tournament. Abbott was incredibly disappointed, but Don Frye did not escape unfazed, with his face resembling a blood mask inflicted by Tank. Tank clearly did not intend to stay in the octagon for long. This was the evening of the Ultimate 96 Championship and the legendary confrontation between Tank Abbott and the Predator, Don Frye. If you want me to make a detailed review of these two guys' careers, please leave your comments, press the like button, and subscribe to the channel. See you next time. Take care.